How do you end a pandemic? This isn't the first time people have grappled with the question. Before modern scientific breakthroughs, many pandemics only ended after ravaging huge portions of the population. The U.S., though, is now making major vaccine progress. About half of U.S. states offer vaccine to all adults now, and President Biden announcing that will be true nationwide by the end of April. So depending on participation, vaccination can make a major dent in the COVID risk facing the U.S., plus other rich nations. While medical experts experienced in fighting pandemics stress that the picture shifts when you start to broaden out and look at the whole world, because in many countries, the enduring problem is the lack of access to vaccines, with global poverty ensuring that billions of people will remain unvaccinated. That's the warning from the man President Obama and Ebola czar Ron Klain called on for advice during the last pandemic scare, epidemiologist Larry Brilliant. And a field full of dueling experts and projections, Dr. Brilliant's expertise draws on work in the field. After smallpox was considered under control in many rich nations in the 70s, he helped lead the fight to eradicate it in India, where one of the WHO's own leaders had claimed it would be impossible to end. Brilliant first went there on a self-described hippie trip to meet a Hindu guru, who then told him his destiny was to help cure the disease. In his memoir about those countercultural times, Brilliant writes, quote, "The first time I met Wavy Gravy was while he waited his turn for vaccination." Brilliant became close friends with the beloved clown, who you may recall had a hosting role at Woodstock. And soon Brilliant was working with the WHO in India to reform its approach from within. He was part of the team that brought smallpox down to eradication, winning him acclaim and a TED Award where he discussed that work.
I got to see the last case of killer smallpox in the world. There's nothing that makes you feel more the blessing and the honor of working in a program like that than to know that something that horrible no longer exists.
Facts. Dr. Brilliant went on to become something like the Forrest Gump of the humanitarian left, mixing an expertise that put him in demand with a radical activist schedule that seemed to put him everywhere, which is part of why he was actually cast in his own movie, Medicine Ball Caravan, that tracked hippies following Joni Mitchell and Jefferson Airplane. Shout out to anyone who remembers that one. While in his real Forrest Gump-style adventures, he went from meeting future Apple founder Steve Jobs in India to getting tapped by Google as the first leader of their nonprofit, Google.org, to linking with the Grateful Dead and co-founding a charitable precursor to today's social networks called The Well, to his activism on civil rights and against the Vietnam War, to delivering a baby on Alcatraz Island in a government standoff that involved a clash over the rights of prisoners and Native Americans, to starting another organization to restore sight to the blind to over 3 million indigent people around the world, to working with 4 different presidents like Obama, whom I mentioned. Kind of seems like Larry knows just about everyone, and full disclosure, that list happens to include my mom, who knew him when they were teenagers. Now, I haven't gotten to spend all that much time with Dr. Brilliant in my own life, but we do get to hear from him right now as his expertise on pandemics has been so in demand. We are joined by Larry Brilliant, MD, MPH, epidemiologist, professor, WHO veteran, and author of the aptly titled Sometimes Brilliant. First time on the beat. Thank you for doing this.
And that's the first time anywhere for me. Thank you, Ari. It's really nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too, Larry. What a life. We'll get to some of that. We'll start with how to best end pandemics and why just this week you're calling attention to the wealth gap, which affects how it will play out for potentially, you said, quote, billions who may not get the vaccine soon.
Well, that's right. I mean, we won't get to herd immunity. We won't ever get to it worldwide. We won't get to it in the United States, if at all, faster than the variants will come back at us. And we need to have another set of tools in outbreak containment, the way we did in smallpox, where we did surveillance and containment. We eradicated smallpox in places that only had 20, 25%, 15% of people immunized. And we need to add that along with the wonderful vaccines, the miracle vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, the terrific rollout that Andy Slavitt and others are doing, almost 3 million vaccinations a day. It's really phenomenal. But on top of that, we really need to add better outbreak control, the way we did in smallpox. And I would add in Ebola a couple years ago in the Congo.
When you look at the WHO, an organization you've really been on the inside of, and you write about how you had to grapple with what you looked at as their sort of short-sighted or elitist thinking. They've been in the news a lot. They've been hit on all sides. They do have this new leaked report. Just reading from that, they say the virus probably emerged initially from bats. Unlikely, they say, to be the result of a lab leak, something that's been rumored about a lot. A research team detailing the most likely scenarios that caused the virus to spill over into humans. Many questions remain unanswered. Your view of the bat theory, as well as how we should understand criticism of the WHO. Many of the people who've come to you for expertise, including President Obama, would differentiate your medically based criticism of them with, say, Donald Trump, who was trying to just outright defund them.
You know, I think about the Olympics and the diving competition, where every prospective Olympic winner is assigned a difficulty score, also in gymnastics. And then you evaluate how they do compared to the difficulty of what they set out to do. WHO is shackled with the worst governing structure in the UN system. It's almost like you were starting a new. I lost you, I think. It's almost as if you were starting. Okay, almost as if you were starting a new a company, and you put on your board of directors your customers, your clients, your employees, and your enemies, because that's how WHO is structured. They almost have to get agreement from nearly 200 countries before they do anything. I actually think Tedros is a really great leader. And compared to other leaders of WHO, he's excellent. There's an organization inside of WHO called GORN, the Global Outbreak Response Network, not exactly a household name. We wouldn't have made this much progress in the pandemic without them. Yes, WHO was late naming it a pandemic. They were late, as they have always been for the past 30 or 40 years, in calling something as dangerous as it was. They're very cautious, but they are actually the science level setters for all the countries in the world, and that's their primary job. Of course, we need to reform WHO. We need to fund it more, not less. I'm glad the United States is back in WHO with our leadership and our strong moral voice.
What did you learn in India that applies to how we get out of this pandemic?
Are you talking about the epidemiology, not the time in the monastery?
No, we'll take both. I mean, reading your book, some parts of your book are a little bit like Batman Begins, where we see you just meditating. The guru tells you that LSD is fine, but it's only a temporary connection to higher things. Why not meditate your way to that permanently and naturally? You give me anything you want from India, Larry.
Well, I'll tell you about Bill Foege, who's was the head of CDC and ran the Carter Center for Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, and helped Bill Gates to start the Gates Foundation. He was my mentor, still is my mentor, and he created the strategy to eradicate smallpox. And that strategy is based on who's the most moral person to vaccinate next. If you've got one dose of vaccine or a limited supply, the most moral person to vaccinate is the one who is about to get the disease, who's just been exposed to someone. And he created a way with not enough vaccine to eradicate smallpox by drawing a circle around those who were infected. It became later known as ring vaccination. It's really important right now. It's a different disease, a different time, different virus, different vaccine. We have to make changes in that strategy. But we don't have and won't have enough vaccine to vaccinate 7 billion people, maybe with 2 doses, in the next couple or several years. During that time, more variants will be created, and they'll come back. And even though we're vaccinated, we run the risk of those variants. Ari, 12 animal species, including cats, dogs, apes, monkeys, mink, have COVID right now. We need to be extraordinarily careful that we do surveillance and rapid detection in the animal-human interface, just as you were talking earlier about the likely source of COVID being a bat.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.